John, can you believe someone would actually say we're the ones to follow? Holy cow.
I believe that all the time, Brad. I mean, I think that, most of the time people walk behind you with a scooper.
Yeah, they do. I'm like at the end of the parade. Okay. Where the horses are there. Okay. That is John Combest. Spell his name Combest. I spell it because you need to type that in the computer, put it in your smartphone, whatever. JohnCombest.com. That will get you to his site. On his site, you will see dozens of articles each single day. He's done this for over 23 years. Every single day he updates the all-important news about the state of Missouri, what's going on, politics, regional, stuff like that, the entire state. But what we do is we start the show off with this guy. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what he does is he does this countdown thing, right?
Now on with the countdown.
And we start with...
In third place.
For our number 3 story today, I'm going to need you to pause and suspend disbelief. Like you're watching a movie, or you're watching pro wrestling, or you're listening to the Hoffmans make plans about the cities of Augusta and Washington. Just suspend disbelief and go along for the ride here, Brad. The Kansas City Star is celebrating the 5-year anniversary of COVID. You know, COVID was that worldwide pandemic, that deadly disease that not only kept people homebound 2 weeks to stop the spread, but it also devastated the economy. And it was 5 years ago. It was early in the year 2020. And the Kansas City Star, starting over the weekend, began running a number of stories to remind us how terrible COVID is. And today's piece reminds us how COVID continues to devastate the entire state of Missouri. Now, they pointed to some long COVID numbers, and they claim that in the Midwest region between Kansas and Missouri, somewhere between 7 to 8% of people who once had COVID are currently suffering the effects of long COVID. So, Brad, suspend your disbelief for a minute, excuse me, and believe along with me that long COVID is a real thing. It's not just a reason for old fat people to complain about why they're tired. It's real. The headline from the Star today: while others moved on, long COVID-19, quote, changed the trajectory of Kansas City women's lives. And I won't go through all the examples here. I'll just touch on them real quick, Brad. They, of course, found a big fat black woman who had a bunch of medical problems. And at one point early in 2020, she had to go to the emergency room. She wasn't feeling well. And doctors originally diagnosed that she did have a urinary tract infection, which, you know, is disgusting, but it happens to women. They have short urethras. A good reminder to women to always wipe front to back. And then it turns out that her sickness continued. And as it turns out, Brad, she had to be hospitalized because she had an irregular heartbeat. Now, Chantel today is mourning the fact that she's crippled by long COVID. She used to walk up to 4 miles a day. Now, I don't know if anybody really believes that she did that because they show pictures of her from around that time. But okay, let's run with that. She walked 4 miles a day. And now it's really hard for her to get around. The other sad story that they point out here that I'll touch on briefly is there's some sort of non-binary that they reached out to who's also suffering from long COVID. And the long COVID was so bad that this non-binary humanoid had to get a hysterectomy. That's how bad long COVID can be, Brad. You can be a woman and then get COVID and then get long COVID and have complications. They got to take out your lady stuff, you know, your equipment, your plumbing there if you have long COVID. So when we hear about COVID, a lot of times we think of, you know, what it did to our economy and the lies that our government told us about vaccines and transmission and things like that. But we forget that it could rob some non-binaries of their lady parts. It could make some fat black people no longer walk 4 miles a day. And just a good reminder to have a little empathy when people claim to have long COVID.
John, you sure this report wasn't on KCUR? That sounds like public radio.
It does sound like public radio.
Like public radio.
I heard
kind of
that
stuff.
KCUR is outraged that another group got an exclusive from a non-binary woman who is technically non-binary but had to get a hysterectomy. You got black people, you got disabled people, you got a non-binary. It's right up KCUR's alley.
Okay, first off, a couple weeks ago, I heard on 2 different radio stations, they were referring to a report, I don't know if you've heard this or not, that long COVID is due to people getting the vaccine. They say that long COVID is actually directly related to the vaccine. Have you ever heard that before?
I had not heard of that theory, no.
Well, that's what they say. I mean, I heard it on 2 different stations. They're saying, well, long COVID is actually the people who got the vaccine, that long COVID is actually a reaction to the vaccine. I don't know if that's true or not. Okay.
Well, but here's the thing. This one woman, so Chantel is an example, the BBW is one example. She says that she gets every COVID vaccine that comes out now.
Well, maybe.
So, yeah, I mean, like you literally can't write the stuff or make it funnier. So to your point, Brad, if every time a brand new vaccine comes out, you have it injected in you and you're already not healthy, do you think that's going to make you feel better?
John, I have to tell you, I mean, once again, I told the stupid story that I drove 250 miles, actually 1,000 miles, 2 round trips to Raymore, Missouri to get my vaccine, which now I regret extremely because I got COVID 2, possibly even 3 times. And to the point where I don't know. I mean, God, you know what? It's so funny. I had the discussion with somebody the other day, and they're going, well, how's the radio business been? I go, it was pretty good up until 2000. I go, what happened? And they said, what happened in 2000? I go, think about that for a minute. COVID, I mean, it killed, the crazy thing about it is it killed so many businesses, but other businesses just thrived over it. I mean, like all the home improvement stores, the big boxes and things like that.
Yeah, people wanting to redo their house because everybody works from home now.
Right, they were stuck at home, so what do? Let's fix up the house. We'll go to Home Depot or Lowe's or the Ace Handyman hardware store or whatever. Okay, before you go on, and you said something that I wanted to mention, and I'm gonna embarrass myself because every time I do this, John says, well, that's been on my last 42 daily reports. Where have you been, Brad? Okay. Have you heard this story about the Hoffmans trying to buy Lee Enterprise in the Post-Dispatch?
No. Do you mean the story that I had up over the weekend?
Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Oh, that story. Yeah. Of David Hoffman trying to buy Lee Enterprises.
Okay. Yeah. On to number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Ooh, we are going to switch visuals here. We're going to go from non-binaries and hefty black women to something a little better to look at. Today at 11 a.m. on This Week in Missouri Politics, the TWMPDaily, the guest will be, what is great to look at, Scott Fawn, our friend Scott Fawn, and also Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman. As mentioned yesterday, I believe it wasn't only breaking, but I believe it was exclusive. Jake Croson from the Missouri Times tweeted, Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman will not be running for re-election. She will be serving 1 term in the Missouri Senate. She was elected in 2022. She will not be running for re-election next year. And today at 11 a.m. on This Week in Missouri Politics, TWMPDaily, follow Scott Fawn on social media to see the link, or you can just go to my website. Go to the go to This Week in Missouri Politics YouTube page and go down to streams and you'll be able to watch it. Today at 11 a.m., we're going to hear from Senator Coleman. Why is she stepping away from the Missouri Senate? Find out. Appointment Television, 11 a.m. today.
I don't even know where to start from all of the things that have been said that are just wrong.
So
I was going to give you a heads up so you could have it ready, and I should have known, Brad, that you don't even need a heads up. You got it at your fingertips.
Okay, I know the whole story behind this.
Oh, this will be good. Yeah, tell us, Brad.
Okay, the whole story behind this is she has fallen in love with Brian Nieves. And
oh, wow.
Even though,
hey, many of us have. Even us heterosexual guys love Brian Nieves.
Even though Brian Nieves is newly married, remarried, I should say. He's on his second wife.
Did he marry you know who?
Yeah, they got married, yeah. Oh,
wow.
John.
See, remember, I'm not a boomer, so I'm not on Facebook.
John,
wow, that's awesome. Good for him.
If you were on Facebook, you'd know that every 30 seconds.
If I were on Facebook, I'd complain about how my joints hurt.
every 30 seconds, there's a picture of Brian Nieves with his new wife. They're here, they're there, they're everywhere. Every 30 seconds, there's a picture of that.
Nice, but go ahead. Okay, so that's your theory.
Well, no, it's not. This is in fact.
Oh, this is fact.
This is fact that Brian. Yes, is fact. All right, that Brian Nieves ran into Mary Elizabeth Coleman and said, "MEC, let me tell you, my life took a wonderful turn when I didn't run for the second term of state senator. Yes, I only ran one time. For senator, and I made it. And let me tell you, my life has been so good ever since." And Brian looked into her eyes, and Mary Elizabeth Coleman looked into his eyes and say, "Brian, will you marry me?" And he says, "Well, I'm married right now." And Mary Elizabeth Coleman says, "Well, I'm married right now too. Well, let's wait till my term expires. We'll both get divorced and we'll get married." Do you believe me?
Wow, that's a really disturbing, I guess you would call it literotica. I don't know, Brad. I think it says a lot about your desire for voyeurism and projecting your own desires for people, both Brian and Mary Elizabeth, onto each other. Let's get back to seriousness for a minute. I think it'll set up, and I'm sure the senator will talk about this, and Scott Fawn and Jake and Kelton will have opinions on this as well. It'll set up a spirited primary in Jefferson County. No shortage of people who want to be a state senator, who want to be one of the 34 in the Missouri Senate. And that's a safe Republican district, and they're going to attract a heck of a lot of strong Republican candidates there.
I heard you're moving to Jefferson County. Is that true?
That is absolutely not true.
You're not moving to Arnold? You're not gonna wear your Crocs all the time?
I will, in the next few years, I might go to LA, but it's not going to be lower Arnold. Be vacationing in Los Angeles.
Okay. That was number 2, correct?
That's correct.
So now we have
the number 1.
A follow-up to something we discussed yesterday. This piece is brought to us by Joe Holliman of the Post-Dispatch. And in fact, when I went to STL today, early this morning, it was the lead story front and center. How Missouri's Eric Schmitt worked to land the Boeing mega deal. Now, we heard comments from Senator Schmitt when the announcement was made. The news stations, I think, had a pretty good sense that Schmitt was the one that made it happen. But Holliman talks with Schmitt, and I think Schmitt does a good job of, not giving himself all the credit, but pointing out the kind of groundwork that it takes to get a deal like this done. And I thought 2 curious points about this. Number 1 was that Schmitt and another senator, Wicker, from down in Mississippi, laid the groundwork for Boeing to get the contract, whether or not Donald Trump won or whether or not Joe Biden won. So they did a good job starting last year. I think it was about a year ago, they said, where they began laying the groundwork of saying why Boeing was the right choice for this, regardless of who wins. So they worked with Biden administration officials, and then knowing that if Trump came in, as Schmitt says, it would be a little bit easier to get the deal done with Donald Trump. That's one curious point. And I think that shows, I think that's probably instructive. Like, if wealth is having options, then you want to have the options of no matter what happens, let's put our hometown employer in a good spot. The second important point is that among all the people crowing about how great this was for the region, people that had nothing to do with getting the deal, like a Sam Page or a Tashara Jones, folks who like to take credit, maybe when they didn't really have a hand in it. Among the people not taking credit was Senator Josh Hawley. And Holliman points out that Hawley has been a vocal critic of Boeing. Last April, Hawley, according to Holliman, butted heads with Boeing officials during Senate hearings on a Ukrainian aid bill. And Hawley's question at the time was, if Missourians should be happy, a mega corporation whose airplanes fall out of the sky is getting billions. So I think it shows a little bit of message discipline here from Hawley. You lay out a little bit. You let your junior colleague take what is rightfully the credit for getting this deal done. And you don't be duplicitous about it if you're Hawley. You don't suddenly become a big Boeing fan just because they're going to be spending a lot of money here. So I think everybody is doing what they should be doing here. So it's the very top link on my website today. Check it out. Joe Holliman, Eric Schmitt, F47.
John, the problem is you have missed a very important part of this story. Do you know that?
Oh, what did I miss?
You missed a huge part of this story. Eric Schmitt did a little bit of work, but the person who busted their butt to get this F-47 project for Boeing is none other than Cori Bush.
She's mentioned at the end of this piece, Brad. I'm glad you brought that up.
She worked tirelessly. Matter of fact, there were weeks when she didn't get to sleep at all. Entire week. She didn't get to sleep because of the fact that she was working the phones and because what did she say? What was that when she was in her first term or second term? And she says, Boeing is such an important part of my district. There's no way in hell I would want anything bad to happen to Boeing. Isn't that what she said?
Yeah, that's a verbatim quote right there, actually. And she helped them get a pandemic loan, I heard.
Yes.
I mean, they had to lie about the number of employees they had, and then they ended up getting indicted. But I think she helped them with some of that paperwork.
Obviously, I'm being facetious because Cori Bush was the one who was trying to shut down Boeing. Okay, once again, when that came out, I thought to myself, is this for real? Is this like a Onion story or Babylon Bee story on a local scale? The number one employer in North County, her district, and she's trying to get them shut down. Let's think about that for a minute, John. Did that make any sense at all to you back in the day or even today if you look at it now?
Yeah, Brad, as long as you oppose weapons of war and the military-industrial complex as war machines, you warmonger, easy for you to say. I thought an interesting anecdote, too, that I didn't know. Eric Schmidt's uncle used to work for good old McDonnell-Douglas.
Really? What did he do?
Yeah, I think everybody has either a relative or a neighbor. I had neighbors that worked for McDonnell-Douglas.
Well,
like if we talked about this at length. Especially if you grew up in North County, the people that you knew that might have had a little bit of money were probably working at McDonnell-Douglas.
Well, the girl I dated for a while, Jessie Johnson, her father was an aeronautical engineer, worked in the F-4 project. I mean, there used to be a deal. You know, I went to high school in the Hazelwood system long before you did, but I remember there was a time when in each one of our classes, the teacher would ask how many kids in the class, their parents, and it was usually mostly men because of the fact that, let's be honest, back in the day, it was mostly men that worked in the defense industry, unless the women were working like back office jobs. And I'm not trying to be sexist. That's just the way.
Right. That's the way it went.
That's just the way it was back in the day.
Nobody thinks you're sexist. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. And the teacher would ask, and there would be some form they would fill out that they would send to the government. I mean, I think they got extra money or something like that. The school district got extra money because the federal government threw some money into the coffers of the Hazelwood School District. Keep in mind, I graduated way before the Department of Education came around in 1979.
Yeah, you predated the Carter announcement. I think you're confused about the McDonnell-Douglas payments, though, to the districts. The girl who you dated, they got a grant for her because she was blind.
Yes.
And she had no sense of smell or hearing.
Right.
She was like Helen Keller with no sense of touch.
Right. That we had fun doing Braille things. Okay,
Wow. Brad, you always were known to let your fingers do the walking.
And her hair was...
One of my favorite things about you, despite the German last name, you have Roman hands and Russian fingers.
Her hair...
She wrote that to me in Braille. She explained it to me.
Her hair was that yellow page golden brown. You know what I'm saying?
I bet it was, Brad.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, you said that Cori Bush was actually mentioned in the article. What did it talk about her? That she tried to get Boeing?
It talked about her anti-Boeing stance. And it also had a great perspective from Senator Schmitt, which was Wesley Bell was cheerleading this. And Schmidt's quote was something to the effect of, hey, I'm probably not going to agree with Wesley Bell on much, but when it comes to helping the area, the more, the merrier.
And especially with Eric Schmitt, a guy who grew up in Bridgeton, right? So he's talking about being close to the Boeing operation. I mean, you can't get much closer than that unless you live in Hazelwood, but that's a whole other story. Okay, we have to take a break. We'll be back